Leads, leads, leads. What is happening? Welcome to Series 6 of Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours aims to record 200 loiners, that's people from Leeds, over the first half of the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and tell me about what they do all day and let me record how this decade affects us. Thank you for listening to this episode. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I love this question because, and I imagine it's the case for a lot of people, it's nothing like you imagined, but there is a little bit of a story. So I was obsessed Trekkie, Star Wars. I was a complete geek. I loved that whole world. And Star Trek, one episode. And after watching this one episode where they rescued a whale, I was absolutely convinced that I wanted to be a marine biologist. I am not a marine biologist. I still love anything to do with the water and the sea and the ocean, but I'm not a very good swimmer. So it's probably just as well I didn't become a marine biologist. But what's really, really interesting about this question is where I grew up. So I grew up in a small town, Luton, and I grew up in the 80s where, unfortunately, racism was pretty much the norm. And you kind of very quickly understood where you stood, where you were positioned in the social ladder. And it's different for different people, but for me it actually helped take away any expectations of what I would become, because I had no expectations, I had no aspirations, because I had no role models. So in my mind as a young child, I remember not really worrying about the future in that sense, because I just kind of knew what my pathway, or what I thought my pathway was going to be. And people had very low aspirations based on where I was in my community, because you're a Bangladeshi female, so you're probably going to get married, and that's probably all you'll do, and you're not going to go and have a career or anything like that. That was very much the message in education. And at that time, obviously, I didn't know I was neurodivergent. So going through the education system, so much just didn't make sense, and you assumed it was because you were from a different cultural background. So basically I had no expectations, no aspirations, other and didn't really worry about it. It's not that I didn't care, I didn't worry about it. And the turning point was, and I also didn't think I was very bright, so I didn't think I was going to achieve anything. So what's the point dreaming about it, was very much the mindset of an 8-9-year-old at the time. And I can't remember the reason why, but I did a little bit of work with a visiting teaching assistant. And at the end of that session, she looked at me, and the way she looked at me and the way she spoke to me, that feeling has stayed with me for my entire life. And she looked at me very seriously and she said to me, "Asma, you are very intelligent. Don't get married. Make sure you go to university." Now, I had no idea what university was, but I remember going home that day and saying to my mum, "Mum, I'm going to university." And I knew that it was really important, and I didn't fully understand why, but I knew I had to somehow get there. And that was a real turning point for me. And that thought and feeling, I've got to get to university, definitely was my goal. for the early years of my life. Through my teens, through my college. What I wanted to do when I was going to get there, I didn't know until a lot later. And it wasn't until I was at college and you had to choose your university degree because university was in sight then by that point. And I knew what my interests were, and I knew I loved people, and I knew I wanted to help people, and I knew I wanted to work with people. But also, I found people really fascinating. I found them very confusing. So naturally, I was drawn to psychology. And I loved how people interacted and communicated with each other. So I was really drawn to communication and people, human beings. They fascinated me. So I actually went to college and studied A-level psychology, communication, and human biology, not thinking about my career and where I was going to go. And I went along to careers advice, which actually wasn't very useful at that point for me.
Surprise.
And instead, I decided to consult a computer program. I think it was called something like Kudos. Anyway, so I put in my likes and my interests and my hobbies, and it churned out a list of potential careers. Marine biology wasn't on there, unfortunately, but it had lots on there. And speech therapist came up, and librarian as well, actually. So so I kind of put that to the back of my mind. And then I remember having a conversation with my sister-in-law, who's a social worker and had worked alongside a speech and language therapist. And she said, "Oh, that is an interesting career. You should really think about it," and told me a little bit about it from her experience. I think that's the second time I came across it. And I must have heard about it from another context. I went and observed a speech language therapist, and then I was hooked. And that's kind of, so I've told you a little bit more than you asked for, but what did I want to be when I grew up? I didn't have a clue in some ways, and then I absolutely wanted to be a marine biologist. But I think going with the flow has led me to the career that was ideal for me. The world chose it for me. And would I do it the same way all over again? 100%, because I didn't have a set plan or an agenda. I had an idea. I went with the flow. I didn't fight the current of the river, and I got to my destination.
You're listening to Series 6, Episode 27, and to my guest, Asma Khanum. This is another Squadcast recorded on the 22nd of May, 2025. Hello, colleague. Asma Khanum is a pioneering speech and language therapist of Bangladeshi heritage and the CEO of Chatterbug Speech and Language Therapy Service. With a wealth of experience, Asma is deeply committed to supporting children with SLCN, speech, language and communication needs. Drawing from her unique perspective as a neurodivergent individual and a mother of neurodivergent children, her work has earned her the ASLTIP Leadership Award, recognizing her dedication to high-quality, tailored support for every child with SLCN. Join Asma in this talk to explore her innovative solutions and learn how you can make a profound impact on children's lives across the UK. Discover how together we can provide the support that ensures every child has the opportunity for a bright and successful future. Right, let's do this. Episode 182 of Working Hours with Asma Khanum. Now, so what is it that you're doing now?
So now I am the CEO of Chatterbug Speech and Language Therapy Service, which is a social enterprise based in Leeds, but we are an NHS partner, and we actually work with local authorities, the NHS all across the UK. We're also commissioned by schools to provide speech and language therapy services into schools. And we also have a private clinic as well based in Leeds. And actually, we do provide private clinic services in other hubs. So we have a number of regional hubs, but our main HQ is in Leeds. So what does the CEO do? Well, we plan the vision, we set the vision, we come up with radical ideas. There is definitely a strong entrepreneurial aspect to my CEO role as well. And it's about leading a team of fantastic individuals that are not only are we trying to grow a business, but we're also wanting to make sure we are delivering positive impact into the communities that we're working with as well.
Hmm.
So there we go. So that's what I now do.
So, well, the next question is, how did you get into it? So how do you go from, I mean, that's quite an odd combination of studies in your university study, the psychology and the communication. So you've got the psychology and the biology sort of thing makes sense to me, but then the communication thrown in to
Mm,
it seems a bit forward thinking, really, in a lot of ways, because it's kind of like, now, well, oh yeah, well, communication is a large part, like there's more of
yeah,
an argument for it now. So
yeah,
how did that come about,
come
and
about.
how
Well,
did you go from there all the way, like how long did that take?
all the way. So that was a long journey.
Mm,
So it was actually at college that I studied psychology. It was A levels, so psychology, biology, and communication study at A level.
okay.
And actually, the thing I should tell you that's quite unique about speech and language therapy is that it's such a broad career.
Mm,
On its own, let alone being a CEO. So speech and
mm,
language therapists work with children and adults with eating, feeding, swallowing difficulties, as well as communication difficulties.
hmm.
We may work with individuals who have voice difficulties as well.
And
So
development as well, like
and
actual
development,
development,
absolutely.
because like with, where they've had feral children, they can't develop beyond a certain stage because they're not socialized. They're not, like, the brain needs that socialization to fully develop.
So communication difficulties in children happen for a wide range of reasons. Sometimes it's to do with environmental factors, sometimes
Mm,
it is to do with developmental factors as well. For us as an organization, it's very much about using a neuroaffirming approach because actually there are lots of ways we can communicate. I mean, depending on the research that you read,
mm,
60 to 90% of our communication is actually nonverbal.
mhm,
But that small percentage of our communication, the words, has a massive impact on our lives and future career opportunities and our ability to access education.
mm,
And I gave you a really good description of myself at school, having low aspirations. I came from a working class family, and education is what helped us move out of poverty.
mm,
I grew up in a council house with 8 of us living in a 3-bedroom council house,
mm,
and without the power of education, without the ability to communicate and interact, that I wouldn't have had the opportunities I've had today.
mm,
And going and thinking about a speech and language therapist's career, um, like in our day to day. So I initially started my career working in the NHS,
mm,
and I worked in Shawstart, which was which is now Family Hubs, Children's Centres, and it was very much working with young children and their families.
mhm,
I've also worked in the Youth Justice Service, so working with young people who have unfortunately found themselves in the criminal justice system, where a vast majority of young offenders have unidentified speech and language needs.
mhm,
I've also worked with adults who've had head injuries from a road traffic accident, and that's left them with, speech, language, and communication challenges that
mhm,
are lifelong sometimes. So it is such a varied career, and the range of people and the individuals that you work with is so vast, and you get to develop so many skills. And even within the degree, we did linguistics, we did child development, but then
mm,
we also did embryology in our to understand how um, uh, the the tools that we use for communication develop and form right from birth. So it's such a varied career, and I'm so grateful that I came across it and I chose it.
mm,
And I would say that it probably put my career in speech language therapy put me in a good position for um, my current role as CEO, because it was never my intention to start my own business.
mm,
But I think when I look back, I always had that entrepreneurial flair.
mm,
For me, when I look at people and I look at community, I see one community and I see similarities more than differences.
mm,
Um, and I see that we can all work together towards a greater purpose and a greater good. So I'm very, very purpose driven. That's really, really important to me. And actually, I think as a speech and language therapist, it helped me to hone and develop some of those skills that I would need later on in my career. And what's really, really interesting about speech and language therapy as well, because it's quite a new profession, it falls loosely into the medical profession. We've only been around for about, in fact, I am going to I'm going to the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists 80-year celebration of our existence.
Mm.
So, we are fairly new. So for us as an organization, innovation is really, really important because I don't know how much you know about the waiting list, but there's always something about NHS waiting lists on the news. And definitely throughout my career, so I've been a speech and language therapist for about 25 years,
Mm.
it's been the same. You know, there just aren't enough speech and language therapists and we're waiting far too long. And in a young person's life or a child's life, that wait could have a considerable impact. So you imagine if you're a 2-year-old
Mm-hmm.
and you're not able to communicate and you're not seen for
Mm.
potentially a few years, you're missing a, a real important critical period for language development.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, innovation is really, really important at Chatterbug, and we've developed lots of tools that allow our teams to deliver therapy fast,
Mm-hmm.
but also think about how we provide our support in a way that is neuroaffirming. And it's not about treating the individual always. It's about helping them to understand what their communication challenges, differences, and needs are, so
Mm.
they can make the best of whatever it is that they want to achieve.
That makes sense. Um, so So sometimes I'll ask, were you pushed or did you jump in terms of starting a business for yourself?
Mhm.
And you said within there that, it wasn't really your intention, but, you also know that you've got that kind of, well, let's just do it. Well, we don't need to fill in 40 forms. I'm here. Let's do it. Um, so that ability to cut through the nonsense. Um, So coming out of study, and then so did you go, was it speech therapy from study? And like, how easy was that was there a pathway, or did you
Mm.
have to like sort of, do a few random jobs before you could actually get a job? Because you say that there's shortage, but also equally with the shortage. So I remember um, years ago, I was someone who wanted to go into physio,
Mm.
and yeah, massive shortage of physiotherapists. Still couldn't get a job in it though. Like, even though we've got this shortage and we need the demand, the roles weren't there. The money wasn't there, and
Mm.
so on and so forth. So was it a fairly straight path, or was it, I had to spend 5 years at, I don't know, WH Smith's or whatever before I got a job in the area I wanted to work in?
um, no, so speech therapy you can do as a vocational degree.
Hmm.
So there is a clear pathway into
So
getting to speech therapy.
you're doing training as you
Yeah,
work, and yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's a vocational degree. You train on the job as you learn. Sorry, you train as you learn. And then a few years ago, they actually also launched an SLT speech therapy apprenticeship.
Hmm.
So now you can very much work on the job as
Mm.
well. So it's again fairly new. I think, by saying it has to be a degree and you have to go to university, we're limiting the range of people that can apply.
Hmm.
And I think the profession acknowledged that. And also, our profession needs to be a representative of the people that they represent, right?
Hmm.
So if we were saying the only route into speech therapy as a career is you had to go to university,
Mm.
well, the cohort is going to be fairly affluent. They're going to be at middle class
Well,
majority.
it's like saying the only way to speak is RP, right? Well,
Yeah,
that
right.
is the only way to speak, and we will all speak.
And it's really interesting actually because when I first moved to Leeds, sometimes parents would contact me for accent therapy, and I think back in the days, in when it first became aware of as a career, accent therapy was a big part of it.
Mm.
Can speech and language therapists provide accent therapy? Absolutely. Should we be providing accent therapy? Um, well, no, because there's nothing wrong with having an accent. It's just a part of your identity,
Yeah, it's who
right?
you are and where you're from, and It's
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there are definitely more varied routes into speech therapy now. And, we have within our organization, we actually have communication and language specialists.
mm,
So they are not speech and language therapists, because you have to train to be a speech and language therapist, and it's a protected title, and
mm-hmm,
you have to register with the Healthcare and Professionals Councils to do that role.
mm-hmm,
But communication language specialists, what we acknowledge is that there were a lot of people that were very skilled and knowledgeable and able to deliver a wide range of intervention. But we developed a program that allowed them to develop their expertise and knowledge in communication and language.
mm-hmm,
So they work alongside our therapists, delivering a wide range of intervention. They don't do the assessments and the reports, but they're able to deliver a really wide range of intervention.
mm,
And we've developed that program in-house, and we've been using that program for a few years. What we've now decided is actually to make that program available for other people. So schools can now identify a member of their team that they want upskilled to that level.
mm-hmm,
And they'll be able to access our training on our online platform and receive all of our tools and resources that we use for screening and providing therapy. But crucially, they'll be able to access monthly supervision from a therapist
mm-hmm,
so that we can ensure that they're getting the right support. And the reason we went down that route, and that program, sorry, is called Teaching First. And the reason why we went down that route is the range of children with speech and language difficulties and the increase in schools. Schools are having to support more and more children with speech and language difficulties. One in four in every class will
mm,
have some kind of speech and language need. And there's just not enough hours in the day really to support all these children. So it's
mm-hmm,
about how we can make sure. So my degree was 4 years. Most speech and language therapy degrees are about 3.5 years.
mm-hmm,
And we can't physically expect somebody who has had minimal training to deliver the same level of support.
mm-hmm,
So how can we support them and give them by giving them the right tools and the right knowledge to allow them to provide support to the children um, where they need it, which is in schools.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so I'm just trying to think of a segue into this. So,
No, I'm just thinking that there are a lot of people that for them speech and language therapy might be as a career might not be an option,
mm-hmm,
but this and there are similar roles out there that are realistic options.
mm-hmm,
You don't have to go off and do a degree, but you can still work with the same population and the children. For me, it's about making sure that anywhere I see a barrier, I want to remove that barrier. I don't like barriers. I hate the word no. I don't like being told no.
mm.
The fastest way to get me to do something is tell me I can't do it. I've always been like that, and that is part of the neurodivergence as well.
Yes,
Um,
defiance disorder is real.
well, there we go.
um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fun to say no to people. um, so right, so let's do a bit of time on neurodivergence before I jump into the other questions. I mean, it might come up again. It probably will. Um, so you know, we've sort of had this conversation before I started recording a little bit.
Mm.
We're both neurodivergent. Is it a particular problem for people who have neurodivergencies? What is the link there in terms of speech therapy and speech difficulties?
Mm.
Like, is it, does it lean more that way, or is there more excellence? And like, how does it work? What's the relationship?
So neurodivergence is a whole field. Like there's a whole range. Like, so who would be? Let's talk about some individuals that would be classified. And in a sense, you could say we're all neurodivergent, but
Let's pick
so
on dyslexic. I'm
let's
dyslexic.
say dyslexia, right? So there are definitely speech and language therapists don't exclusively work with dyslexic, right? But I have a lot of experience with working with dyslexic clients, and for them the barrier is the written language, but there's all the other associations around cognitive and planning and um, you know And for me, it's the emotional labels that you collect as you go through the system.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that person's so disorganized, he's messy in his writing, he just doesn't know how to plan. Those are the labels that a lot of dyslexic individuals gather as they go, and that then has a knock-on impact on their confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very similar for neurodivergent individuals, so anyone that's autistic or has ADHD. So I can give you a couple of examples from my own family. My daughter, my eldest daughter has ADHD, and she is constantly falling off her chair and bumping into things. She's a very, very, very,
Can't
very
sit
bright
still,
girl.
can't sit on
She
a chair
can't sit.
normally. No.
Yeah, so the feedback before, and she didn't really want to share with her school that she has ADHD.
Mm.
And she masks very well, but she'd come home and she was exhausted and shattered. And and every parents' evening, the feedback that I would get would be, yeah, she's doing all right, but bearing in mind she wasn't doing all right, she was actually doing phenomenal. But they would say it was always focused on the fact that
Yeah.
she disrupts the class.
Yep.
She's always humming or she's flicking something, and I'd really appreciate. And then when she was happy to share about her ADHD, it was like a light bulb moment for the school, and they were like, ah,
Mm.
because in their mind, this is a bright girl
Mm-hmm.
and she's just so inconsistent and variable.
Mm.
What they didn't realize is sometimes she'll walk into a room and there'll be a sound in the room,
Mm.
and that sound will be really off-putting. So she is very sensitive, very
Mm.
sensory. So sounds or smells, or she's very emotional, like, and it can go from 0 to 10 in a second, and she doesn't always know why, and she's not always able to articulate why, even though, yes, she is very articulate and academically very able. And when they started thinking about her and looking at her through a neurodivergent lens and starting putting some measures into place, they saw a very different child.
Mm.
And she also, I mean, she's one of the lucky ones. I speak to parents pretty much on a daily basis who their struggle is getting people to understand that their child is neurodivergent, and the girls are because they present in a slightly different way in terms of our diagnostic models.
Mm-hmm.
They're very clear cut, but they're very much based on a male population.
Mm-hmm.
They miss the girls, and there's a lot of work going into that. So it's about so and I think if we think about it from a work perspective, if you were to apply for a job today, actually, even before you got to the interview stage, your barriers, let's look at your barriers. Well, first of all, you would have to be able to access, read, and digest all the interview information, the job
Mm-hmm.
descriptions. You may even be required to do an interview task within a time frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's before you even get to the interview. And
Mm-hmm.
by that stage, you're probably really anxious and nervous. So let's throw that into the mix. And then you're going to be given these interview questions and grilled, you know so it's and let's think about the planning. And what about if you were in a room where there was a loud fan? How would that impact on you? It's all these little things, and they seem like little things, but they can really throw neurodivergent individuals. I mean, I can take so many examples from my career. I remember, as part of a really important contract bid, I had to do a presentation, and as soon as I walked into the room, there was a really, really loud whirring sound. According to me, it was that loud. Nobody else could hear it. And I
Mm.
stood there for a few minutes thinking, just staring at the screen. And my colleague, who knew I was neurodivergent, was like, she was sat there really anxious. Is Asma going to be able to perform or not?
But it's also that it's like, I can hear that, nobody else can hear that, why can I hear that? And then that's the only thing you can hear.
Exactly. Yeah, 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 absolutely. And depending on, how much people understand neurodivergence, they're looking at you, and you're the CEO, and you know, you, you're the representation of your business? I mean, it absolutely isn't a reflection on my team and our ability to do our job. We are hot at
Mm.
our jobs and we know our stuff, but you know, my neurodivergence is part of my identity, and
Mm.
it will present itself. And yes, I mask my neurodivergence, but that's to my own detriment. And
Mm.
actually, I'm becoming better at not masking. Because I want people to know that neurodivergence is me. It's you. It's so many people,
Mm.
and this is how we look. We look just like you.
Mm.
We're no different. We look just like you. and yes, we feel things and sense things differently, but actually the allowances and accommodations that we need you to make aren't massive accommodations. They're accommodations that often benefit everybody. But I guess the thing to remember is that neurodivergent people look like you and me, and quite often it's not obvious, particularly as they get older,
Mm.
right? They're the people that traditionally people will think, oh, there's something odd about them,
Mm.
right? And I just don't know what, you
Mm.
know,
Well,
and
also, you just used to be able to be odd. Do you know what I mean? Like, be
yeah.
eccentric, be a bit weird, have character. Have a character. Like, it's this. I don't know. It's weird. It's like stuff that's always been there and has always happened, and
It's
it's
always
like
been
as
there.
if it's all new, and as if
Yeah,
it's like, oh, what's this now? It's like it's that thing that's always been happening. Now we've
yeah.
got a
We've
new
just
name
got
for it and a
yeah.
bit more understanding.
Exactly. Do you know, I was telling my daughter this morning about so she has a friend and she's like, I'm Sway, he's neurodivergent mum. And he probably is. And she was telling me about him and he's really into history and but I remember a young a young man I used to work with. He must have been about 11 or 12 and he loved the Victorians. He spoke like a Victorian. He dressed like a Victorian. He was the sweetest man. Honestly, he was such a young boy and such a sweet boy, and just the way he spoke and his mannerism was so polite and so loving. And all he wanted to do was talk about the Victorian era.
Mm.
That was his special interest, and he loved it. And he wasn't doing any harm. And yes, people would describe him as quirky and eccentric, and actually the accommodations that he needed was stuff that anybody could provide, which is understanding that he has an obsession. He will want to talk about his obsession. It's about how you navigating away from that obsession and understanding that he is likely to face challenges because other children his age won't see that as normal and acceptable,
Well, that and
right?
also they've internalized that like you're not supposed to talk about this. You can talk about things that you're interested in, but only a little bit. And these are the things that we've decided that we're allowed to talk about that are
Exactly,
interesting,
exactly.
because all that peer pressure stuff's happening all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's helping them navigate those scenarios and conversations and protect their confidence and their well-being. There's nothing wrong with you.
Mm.
You have a special interest. It's the, Victorians. Lots of people have special interests.
Mm.
It's about knowing when it's appropriate to talk about those interests and when they might not be, and being able to read those signs and cues, which doesn't come naturally to neurodivergent. And a lot of and as a speech and language therapist, those are the kind of areas that I would support and work with.
Mm.
It's about helping them to navigate that and developing their own box of tools to help them navigate society in a way that
Mm.
helps them to maintain their identity and their well-being and their confidence in themselves.
And build that confidence, like
Yeah,
maintain that confidence, because that's what gets chipped away at when
yeah.
people are sort of, the low level things that they're nothing, but over time accumulate. It's an erosion of confidence, isn't it? Of those little knocks.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
what should employers, especially responsible employers, know about this issue?
Yeah. I guess the first thing I would say is that it's not an issue. It really, really is not an issue, right?
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be a barrier. So at Chatterbug, we're building neurodivergence into the culture.
Hmm.
And, they say that you always attract people to your organization that are similar to your ethos and values, right?
Hmm.
So we're very much focused on recruiting to our values. So we do have a lot of divergent staff. So it's not just in policy, it's about and for us it's about being proactive, not reactive, right? So we think about interview performance and where where interviewees have revealed that they are neurodivergent, have dyslexia, or are autistic, we take that into account when we're scoring their interview responses,
Hmm.
right? But um, rethinking job descriptions, right? Because sometimes for a lot of people who are neurodivergent are quite literal.
Mm.
So they may look at a job description, be perfectly suitable for that role, but there will be certain elements in that job description that will exclude them.
Mm.
Right. So it's about rethinking your job description and is it written in a neuro-affirming way? Is the language explicit and clear? Um, does it does it does it set out the role in the way that you intended and the way that the role needs to function on a day-to-day? Because actually, when you read job descriptions, quite often the job descriptions don't match the
No,
job,
they never
right?
do.
So it's just good practice for any business. That's why that's one of my top
Yeah,
tips is
know what this job is that you're hiring for. Like
exactly.
what hang on, what's this that you've written here about what you want this person to do that I'm already doing? That's like I'm not doing that.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So it's just good advice for a hiring process.
Yeah.
Rethink your interviews and application process as well. Like, how are they applying for this job? Is there only one way to apply for this job? Can they apply for it in a different way? Can they
Yeah, does it
interview?
have to be job application? Can they
Yeah,
send a video? Can they interview? Can they
yeah,
ring up? Can they have a
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Does it need to be face to face? Can it be virtual? If there is a face to face requirement, that needs to be made very, very clear,
Mm-hmm.
because actually a lot of roles don't,
Mm-hmm.
and neurodivergent individuals may struggle with that. But actually, think about it. How much does your IT person need to be able to interact with your wider customers? So I'm using that as an example because we
Yeah,
did
yeah.
have a neurodivergent IT person who actually had no customer facing um, interactions at all. He engaged with the team and actually he could do that really, really well.
Mm.
But the team were also respectful that he interacted in a very different way. So he didn't need to be included in their team lunches and their team outings.
Mm.
He didn't mind, but he wanted to come to Christmas do. And
Yeah.
he didn't want to come and interact with you, he just wanted to be there.
Yeah.
So, and it's about respecting that, and that's okay. So that brings him joy, just being there, and not engaging in the conversation.
Yeah, and it's not always being rude.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, no, I can't handle that many people. Why should I be subjected to it so that
yeah,
you all feel comfortable and feel that I'm not being rude?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
those kind of things.
yeah, absolutely.
But there
Interviews
is
with
also being rude.
you can usually tell
You
those
can
apart
usually
though,
tell, yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
a neurodivergent person will be consistent in their behavior wherever and whoever it's with,
Mm.
right? Sure, it doesn't mean that neurodivergent people can't be rude to people. Of course they can.
Yeah.
But a rude person is just rude to everybody.
Yeah.
so, so there is. It's about working out if there's a pattern, a consistent pattern. Think about in the interview again. Does it have to be a written task or can it be a practical task? Right. If you're
Mm.
asking them, if you're employing them for a creative role, can they show you their portfolio or their work?
Mm.
Do they need to talk it through?
Mm.
It's about really thinking about is the interview fit for the role
Mm.
ultimately, but also can they do it in a different way,
Mm.
right? The second one I would say is creating safe neuro-affirming spaces is so easy, and they don't just benefit your neurodivergent employees, they benefit everybody.
Mm.
So we have a room in the office. So our office, the way it's set up, is very, very quiet, 9 till about 3 o'clock, because our clinical team work predominantly in schools and settings. 3 o'clock, all hell breaks loose, and it's so busy, and it's buzzing, and for a vast majority of people, that's great. They like to come back. They like to talk about the children and families that they've worked with and share their examples, because for them, that's an opportunity to share learning as well.
Mm-hmm.
For some, it's just too chaotic. It's just too loud. It's too busy. So the developers and the marketing team, headsets go on at 3
Yeah.
o'clock, right? So that's the tool they develop for themselves. But we've also have a protected room
Mm.
from 3 till 5 that is used as a quiet space, and anyone entering that quiet space has to stay quiet and not interact with other people that's working in that quiet space.
Mm.
Right, so that's an example of a safe space that we've created. Is that impossible for employers to do? is it? It's really, really not, is it?
No,
And
and
you,
I've seen offices that do it, and they're like not even necessarily in an intentional way. You know, sometimes offices that create quieter spaces for people, and like this floor is we don't make noise here, and you can make noise over there, and those kind of things are kind of considered for some workplaces, quite a few
mm,
workplaces that I've
mm.
seen.
And we do have a little zone where it's bean bags,
Mm,
and there's sensory toys, fidget toys as well. Um, the main thing is there is a culture of accepting people as they are,
mm,
right? We are all weirdos, we are all odd, and
mm,
we accept that,
mm,
right? We accept and we celebrate that. And that goes through everything we talk about, our company values. It's challenged where in managers where we feel that they are being discriminatory if just because they don't like someone,
mm,
they are challenged to provide facts and be objective. Everyone is entitled to be who they are,
mm,
but they still need to do the same job essentially. But actually, if they're a little bit quirky, that's it. The culture here is very much accepting of people and how they want to present themselves. Before its time, we've always been like that, because actually things like racism, discrimination, they've never made sense to me, because we're the same. We're all essentially the same.
mm.
And I know, and people fixate, they think neurodivergent people are odd and we fixate, but people fixate on differences in religion and fight over that for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
That is odd to me. So yeah, but we won't go down that route.
Yeah, I will just say it's almost as if there are people with vested interest in keeping things the same.
Right, right. Yeah, because it's just easier for them, maybe.
Mm,
And it's about control. But I'll go on to my third tip, because
mm,
this is slightly different, which is you have to invest in deep learning, particularly of your management team and your HR department.
mm-hmm,
If they don't understand neurodivergence and how to create a neuroaffirming work environment, they really need to go away and understand it,
mm-hmm,
because neurodivergence isn't going away. But the main thing to remember is, if it works for a neurodivergent person, it is more than likely going to work for your other employees,
mm,
right? So it's about understanding what the challenges and barriers are, and really trying to understand. So regulation is a big one. When someone is kicking off, really trying to understand what happened, what were the triggers, right? There's acceptable behavior and there's unacceptable behavior. Of course, I get that.
mm-hmm,
And actually, neurodivergent individuals, we generally hold ourselves to account as well. But sometimes there is something that happens that dysregulates you,
mm,
and it will come out in your behavior, right? And actually, as managers, it's really important to understand what that looks like, and what the triggers. Is this a pattern of an employee who's disengaged? Or is it that this particular employee is autistic and has a preferred chair, or how they desk needs to be set out, and
yeah,
actually that throws them. I'll tell you what, one of my personal bugbears is my office and the cleaner. And I've tried to explain to her in so many ways that I need to walk into my room and it needs to be exactly the way I left it.
mm,
My mouse needs to be in exactly the same place, my screens, because if it isn't, that takes out a good chunk of my day, because I need to realign it
yeah,
to exactly how it needs to be. And that's stressful for me. It's not me being difficult, it's stressful for me. I can't start my day without things being in a very specific way.
mm.
So, but fortunately for me as CEO, I can lock my office. So she no longer cleans my office.
But
But that's okay. I don't mind cleaning my own office.
at least you know how it's done and where everything is. But it is that it is one of those prime things of like, but it's so. I mean, you even know it from school, like people have like my pen or my chair or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't really matter, but also it does.
Yeah. Spoons are a conversation that me and my daughters have. we talk about cutlery a lot
Mm.
because
Oh, so actual spoons, not spoons
yeah,
as in how much.
no, actual spoons, like, the feel of the spoon, the texture of the
Mm,
spoon, the type of metal,
mm,
it can really affect not, for us, the taste, but
mm-hmm,
also the feel. So my
mm.
daughter, who's ADHD, she also has she's
And how it
hypermobile.
cuts into the food as well, like
Yeah,
the
and what angle?
satisfaction.
Yeah, that is also a thing actually. The texture. ASMR, my daughters have told me ASMR, it's about this is why TikTok is so
Mm,
popular.
mm,
TikTok videos can have 1 million views just because of a sound that they use,
mm.
the popular sound. ASMR is absolutely a thing.
Well, it's like
But
the
yeah.
Bill Bailey thing where he's talking about, when you pierce the foil on the top of the coffee, and he's like, "Ooh, the joy of that! How
Oh
satisfying
yes.
is that?" Like the sound, just the pleasure of it piercing through, and then you roll it around and undo all of the top and peel that off.
Yeah,
That's the good
absolutely.
stuff.
And from going back to employers, like thinking about market research, this is actually quite a funny story. And I can't, we were on this, so a couple of years ago, I was on this business development group, and we were all, and this one company in my group, they were from a manufacturing industry, and they were changing the packaging of their products.
Hmm.
And I had just completed a bit of a quite a big renovation job on our property, so I had loads of samples, and I love packaging
Mm.
because of the texture and the sounds, and
Hmm.
and I could see them taking notes. I was like, and this box, so these angles, and the amount of depth and knowledge I was able to share with them, that was so insightful, right? I was so into the packaging, and I was just I knew everything about, and this was just amazing market research for them,
Mm.
and I had so much pleasure sharing that knowledge with them. So that's another unique skill, some neurodivergent. So there are skills, of course, there are
Mm.
challenges. We talked a lot about the challenges because there's a common misconception that if you don't have severe learning difficulties as a neurodivergent person, then you must have a super skill. I can
Mm.
tell you now, I don't have a super skill. I cannot draw to save my life.
Mm.
I can cook.
Mm.
I guess that could be a super skill because a lot of people can't cook these days. But it's that common misconception. It's not that we all have a super skill.
Mm.
It's just that we're just like everybody else. We have these spiky profiles where we have strong abilities because
Yeah.
of our neurodivergence, like that packaging thing. Because of my attention to detail,
Mm.
I was able to share so much knowledge and insight about how packaging feels and looks, and what would be ideal for certain things, because my ability to hyper focus and get very excited about things that other people wouldn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and as well, if you want that, I mean, you're a gold mine for them, aren't you? Because it's like, will someone please tell us about the packaging? Like, we just want to know something, anything. Are we doing good? Is it right? Like, is it all wrong? And then you go, I know about the packaging. Listen to me. Here is the information. And
yeah,
then they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, phew.
yeah, yeah. Do you know? So I mentioned my husband's dyslexic. He has this amazing ability that I am absolutely in awe in. He'll walk into a room and he'll be like, "That's not at the right angle," right? To a point where I have taken out a leveler
Mm.
and a tape measure to check, and never has he been wrong. So, yes, of course there are abilities. There are. Particularly when you're at school and you get ignored, you're able to develop other abilities. Like
Mm.
I would say throughout primary school, certainly because I wasn't being challenged, I daydreamed and
Yeah.
created loads of worlds in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
A lot of neurodivergent people do that, don't they? They have
Yeah.
a great
That's
creative
all I
blend.
got at school. Oh, he spends all day daydreaming. It's like, well, tell me something interesting then.
Tell me something that I don't know or I haven't figured out in the first 2 seconds after you
Yeah.
said something.
Watch me when you actually engage me and I'm just staring at you like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's a really good example. Yeah.
So I'm going to do some quick fire on the questions just so we cover some of them. So I'm going to
Mm.
start us off with I'm going to do climate change and Brexit because I think they might be shorter.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. So first of all, since we have Brexited, has anything about your work changed?
Um, yes, I mean it has. It absolutely has.
Hmm.
Shortages, just like everybody else, rising costs, the changes in frameworks and rules and regulations.
Hmm.
It has definitely kept us busy.
Hmm.
So I would say, yeah, same as many other businesses.
Hmm.
But for us personally, have focused on developing local resilience, and um, we want to employ locally. We want to develop local skills. That's something that we're really, really passionate about. That's one of our values as an organization. So when I worked in London, we had quite an international workforce. And a lot of my colleagues were from South Africa and Australia and New Zealand. And that stopped. Well, to be honest with you, having moved to the north, so I started my career in the south, having moved to the north, that's a massive difference anyway.
So climate change. So
Mm,
I mean, there's lots of ways that you can come at this. I It's in there for a lot of reasons for me, mainly so that I can talk about climate change. It's a nice, unseasonably hot April day today.
mm.
Does it affect your work at all? Is it part of your work? Is it part of the consideration? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? I tell you what doesn't make sense to me.
Hmm.
What doesn't make sense to me is we have to sit and really seriously think about it,
Mm.
right? Because I believe we should all be thinking about it. We should
Hmm.
always have been thinking about it.
Hmm.
So when Chatterbug was set up 16 years ago, one of the big questions we asked is how can we reduce our environmental impact,
Hmm.
right? So for us, it's always been the way of working,
Hmm.
and we very much we've always been paper light. We're pretty much paperless.
Hmm.
The challenges came for us, and we reduced travel. We work from locations in settings,
Hmm.
and we really focus on how we schedule our staff. So we are reducing travel time, um, and reducing the impact. So we've always thought about it like that. The challenge came is when we 2P'd over teams from new contracts that we acquired,
Hmm.
and they came with a very different mindset. They didn't want to work virtually. They didn't want to be paper light. They wanted to be able to travel numerous times because they'd forgotten a charger
Mm.
from another site. There was just no thinking about let's let's share resources where we can. They just naturally did not have that way of thinking, whereas
Mm.
our team have always worked like that and have always thought like that.
Mm.
So there is a big focus for us, but I guess it didn't have to be a complete overhaul,
Hmm.
because our business was developed with that in mind, about thinking about it's about being responsible. Goes back to that thing about how we are connected to the wider world around us,
Mm.
and whether that's my neurodivergence or that's just my way of thinking. But I believe that we anything we do as individuals impacts on someone somewhere, right?
Hmm.
And it's all of our responsibilities to be aware of what that impact is.
Mm.
So yeah, we've always worked, and you know what, ultimately for businesses, anything that saves the environment also saves you money.
Hmm.
So it's coming back to the logic for me. It makes sense for us to really prioritize, climate change and our focus on our impact on the environment and anything that we can do to reduce that.
Mm. It's that tension between the short-term thinking of, the next quarter's profits and the long-term thinking of, well, if we want to make real profits over the long time and real growth and real change, we have to think long term. But the money people always want you to think short term. Like, what profits can I get this quarter? I've got to reinvest somewhere else next quarter. I want my
Mm,
profits now. And it's that, and we have it the same in politics. It's like this absolute refusal to invest. Of like, we will do anything but invest. We will sell anything, but we won't think about, next years after, or anything
it
like that.
just makes no sense to me. It's a bit like sorry, I'm moving on to a different topic, but it's a bit like how we treat young people
Mm.
in the UK, right? I'm saying the UK because I can't comment on countries that I haven't been in because
Yeah.
I'm autistic and we only talk about what we know. So what I know is my experiences here in the UK.
Yeah.
We are historically have been quite negative about investing into young people.
Mm-hmm.
And then we suddenly realize, hold on, we're getting old. Who's going to do our job?
Mm-hmm.
And we're also closing all the barriers. So we don't want anyone to come to our country. So
Yeah.
who's going to do our work? Well, let's train these young people. Problem is, that needed to have started a long time ago.
Well, and also, who's paying for it? Because the government won't pay for it, and industry won't pay for it. So it's like, oh, what, we're going to put in another new tax to pay? It's that sort of thing of
Yeah.
like, so where actually does the buck stop?
Mm.
Does it just go round and round and round and round, or does
It's
it
with
not stop?
every single one of us.
Mm.
It's with every single, and the thing is, with politicians, they can really influence and shape that, so they
Mm.
have a bigger responsibility. But it does, it absolutely is every single one of us. The way I see society treat teens
Mm.
shocks me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having rules about what time they can enter a shop, you know, and if they're in school uniforms, how the staff treat them.
Mm-hmm.
You're sending out a loud and clear message to young people. You are an inconvenience to us,
Mm.
right? You're not it's for me, it's always about kindness. Yes, I know there's bad teens out there, right? Have I been one? Maybe. Have I hung out with loads? Absolutely. I've seen it from every angle. Do I work with them? 100%.
Mm.
Are a lot of them really, really, really bright and ready to contribute towards society?
Mm-hmm.
Bright, yes. Maybe not ready, but
Mm.
absolutely able.
Mm.
Right? So each one of us can take responsibility for that. And it's from simple ways we interact with them in education. You know, some high schools, I go to prisons as well as go to high schools. And let me tell you, sometimes I can't differentiate between the two.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very rule-based society. You must wear your blazer, even if it's like 28 degrees,
Mm.
or you can't enter the canteen. How is that impacting on that child's learning and
And
education?
yeah, what bloody use is that for? Well,
Exactly.
it's to tell you, you will conform. This is what you need to learn.
Right.
Do as you're
Absolutely.
told.
Yeah, yeah. And we build that. We want everybody to conform because actually that makes it easy for us to control them, right? I
Yeah,
get
but
all
it
of that.
doesn't. It
But it
doesn't, does
doesn't in the
it?
long term. It
It's
doesn't
like,
pay in
oh
the long.
well, again, it's short term, isn't it? Well, if I beat this person or this whatever to get them to do what I want right now, doesn't
Mm,
matter that that'll kill them. Like, a couple of months down the line, I've got what I want right now, and that's all
yeah,
that matters.
yeah. And then the ones that can't conform to our rules, well, they're broken and they're damaged and they're wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you tell someone that, that's what they will end up,
Mm.
right? Very few people will fight that. So it takes a lot of strength will, and it's repeated message, and it's about trying to, and you know, we're trying to solve such a, and I think it's a part of the human disease,
Mm.
right? We are selfish, we are greedy, we are destroying the world because we want more and we want it faster,
Mm.
right? And even if we have enough, we don't want to share it.
Mm.
So every one
Well,
of
and
us
also we
can take
don't know how much
responsibility.
enough is.
Yeah,
This is the thing of like, okay, well, you should know when you've had enough. Well, what is enough?
yeah,
Like, how do I know when I've got enough? Is it a house? Is it a house that, and then I've got enough money to pay for all the bills every month and food for
yeah,
the next however many years? How long am I going to live? I don't know.
yeah.
Is that enough?
Well, yeah, yeah, and this is the thing. I think what's a linear pathway for one isn't necessarily the right pathway. And this has been something very much on my mind a lot recently, actually, because my one of my middle daughter, she was diagnosed with leukemia 3 years ago. There wasn't a pathway for that.
No,
That wasn't what was supposed to happen to her.
no.
You know, she's autistic, fine, I can cope with that, but she's also got leukemia. And hold on, are you telling me now she's going to have some element of lifelong challenges? How the hell am I supposed to navigate that as a parent now?
Mm,
That pathway doesn't exist in my mind and my brain,
mm,
right? So this is the other thing, is that we can plan a life based on what other people have told us or what the traditional experiences are.
mm,
But we have to understand that the world is changing fast, and the only ones that will survive are the ones that are able to adapt and navigate change.
mm.
right? And it is possible, but the rigidity of the rules and the systems that we have to be comfortable in challenging those, and we have to be comfortable with sometimes doing things different. And the one thing I learned, Simon, during my daughter's treatment is, remember how I said I don't like the word no?
Mm.
It absolutely confirmed to me that the word no, 90% of the cases, doesn't apply,
Mm.
right? Because there's so many things that they told me, nope, that's not possible. And I would question, I would question, I would question, because I wanted to understand it, not because I was challenging it, because I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to understand it. Because when it's your child, you will fight for anything for your child. And actually, a lot of the times, even the professionals would say, you know what, you're right. I don't know why we do it that way. Let's try it a different way.
Mm-hmm. Why do we do
And
it like that? Because that's the way we've always done it. Why have we always done it like that?
exactly, yeah,
Because so
yeah,
and so told me to do it.
yeah,
Like a
yeah,
lot of the time, there's a really good reason for why it's always
yeah.
been done
But
like
you have
that.
to know it. You have to
Yeah.
understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way you're going to change it, because when you start asking your questions, yourself that question, you will either get to the conclusion, right, actually, this is the right way to do it. And now I understand why I do it this
Mm-hmm.
way. But equally, you might realize, actually, I don't know why we do it that way. And that is something that's the difference between working in public health versus working in at Chatterbug,
Mm-hmm.
is that why is ingrained in us. I will ask the team why,
Mm.
whatever it is, because I need to understand it, right? But also it's about us taking in a 360 perspective. Um, and for us, in terms of speech and language therapy, we do what we do to provide the service that that child or young person needs, not what we need,
Mm.
right? It's about finding the objective for them, right? Jack, you can say the S sound now, great, but how has that transformed your life? What can you do now that you couldn't do before? Or what do you want to be able to do? How is that not being able to say the S sound a barrier for you?
Mm.
Right? That's what we look at.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge effect as well, isn't it? I mean, it's like our physicality. Your voice is, and how it's part of how you present, and it's how you're seen and interpreted and heard. And if there's stuff that you're aware of, especially if someone's pointed it out, normally not in the kindest way, but like you can become hyper fixated on these things.
Mm,
And I so I've got I'm aware of the time, and I've got a couple of things that I'm going to say in a second, but
of
I
course.
want to get you to just say a little bit on stammering. So
I knew
because
you were
that's
going to ask me about stammering.
yeah, because it's kind of a common thing, but I like that it's becoming more audible, more visible within,
Yes.
like I like that. Because it's how a lot of people speak, and not everybody's got a stammer, and some people have severe stammers, but a lot of us, loads of people, like, repeat things. Most people will
Mm.
repeat words and so on. So it's part of a natural way of speaking. But like, what's your take on stammering, and like, is it an issue? Is it a problem? Is it all natural and good, or like?
Yeah, it absolutely is natural and good. And you know what? For the first time ever this week, I was watching a little video tutorial. It was a sales tutorial,
Mhm.
and the guy left his stammer in,
Mm.
and I loved it. I thought, how amazing. It made me so happy. Because actually, yes, it's part of some people's profile that they stammer,
Mm.
right? Now, what we don't want to do, so traditionally, speech and language therapists used to focus on treating the stammer,
Mhm.
and then we realized that we can't actually treat the stammer.
Mhm.
It's about helping the person to become more comfortable with their stammer,
Mhm.
or modifying their environment, because the environment might be a trigger
Yeah.
for making their stammer worse. So we can definitely work. So particularly with young children, when there's a lot of pressure on them to talk and communicate fast,
Mhm.
that can be a trigger, right? So, and sometimes what happens when you are stammering, um, you have secondary features that make your stammer appear worse than it is.
Mm.
So you might have facial grimaces or taps, or you might get really frustrated, and and those might make your stammer look worse than it is, but also make you feel worse about it.
Mm.
So we can support around those. However, it's very much up to the individual, right? So some of the young people that we work with, children and young people we work with, is very much just we focus on the parent and the environment and making them feel comfortable and confident that how to support the stammer.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's about helping them to give them the tools and the words to talk about their stammer.
Mhm.
But some come back to us and say, right, I get it. I get that stammering is okay. I'm okay with it as well. But actually, I'd like to be able to stammer more comfortably.
Mm.
So we can help with strategies around that. But going back to your question, yeah, it's beautiful. It's just a part of someone's presentation, it's someone's personality. No one should ever feel that they have to change themselves to fit in. Because let me tell you, it doesn't matter how much you try to change yourself and try to fit in, you're not going to fit in. There'll be
Mm.
something else that stands out. So, people just need to be accepting and tolerant. And for something that's really obvious and physical, people generally are quite accommodating and patient.
Mm.
Um, your stammer isn't a reflection on your ability to do your job,
Mm.
right? If you have a customer facing job, yeah, it might be a little bit harder. But if you are really confident and you want to be in that customer facing job that requires you to interact with lots of individuals, hell, why not?
Mhm.
I was in my local Asda, and there was a customer service rep, and he had a physical tick,
Mm.
and it was fast, and he was stacking the shelves. And I'm sure a lot of people, once they get past that initial, oh my God, is he going to drop something? It's great.
Mm.
He was just getting on, cracking on, doing his job, minding his own business.
Mm.
You know, should he not be in employment because he has a tick?
Mm.
Of course not. So yeah, a big part of it is us society changing our mindset of what we think is normal and acceptable and cool, or whatever the phrase we want to
Mm.
use.
Mm. Yeah. Well, there's so much in there. So what I'm going to do is
Mm.
I'm going to say here, right? Is there any of the questions that you particularly want to answer? So pick one of them if there is anything. You don't have to say yes to this. If not, I'm going to ask you to do the socials and I'll close it up. But you are more than welcome to come back and finish off the questions or anything like that, should you want to. Um, but yeah, I am, because we've kind of run out of time for various reasons.
Mm.
So yeah, first of all, tell us where to find you, and then if you want to pick any of the questions, if you've got time to throw in an answer, feel free to do that. You could, I mean, if you've got them all written down, you could do a quick like this.
I
Up
have
to
I
you.
have I have got my notes, so I'll read them out kind of. I'll say the question, read them out, and then you can edit it how you want. But yeah, but I will start with the socials. So Chatterbug Speech Language Therapy Services. You can find us on all social platforms. It's at Chatterbug SLT.
Hmm.
And I also have my own social media, and I'm across all platforms as well. And it's
Hmm.
asma.ceo. So I would love it if I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
You will definitely see most of my personality on LinkedIn. So, I'd love it if people would find, follow, comment,
Engage, yeah.
engage. Yeah, that would be wonderful. So one of your questions, what three things would you change about your work?
Yes.
So I've got three tips. And the first one is protecting heart-led leaders, because traditionally we think about leaders as being these really strong characters that you can't break down, and they're very confident and they're very alpha, but actually the heart-led leaders are just as valuable,
Mm.
but they do need protection in this way. They so businesses like ours are heart-led, right? And our focus is about having a purpose.
Hmm.
We are a limited company. And for us, absolutely, we focus on profits because we want to be here forever,
Hmm.
doing all the positive things that we do.
Hmm.
But um, heart-led leaders burn out far quicker.
Mm.
right? Because they want to do right by people, and they often forget to look after themselves. And actually, as employees, I'm telling employees, if you have a heart-led leader, it's also in your interest to make their jobs as easy as possible so you can keep them.
Mm.
Because heart-led leaders are special. They're not weak. They have vision and they can get the job done, and they'll get the job done in a kinder way. And
Mm.
it doesn't mean they can't make difficult decisions, and it doesn't mean they'll give you everything that you want, because that isn't a leader.
Mm.
But if you have a heart-led leader, you want to protect them and keep them in that job for as long as you can. And heart-led leaders, they respond to your feedback.
Mm.
You know, they want to know that they are creating something that is benefiting you, because that is what drives them. The
Mm.
money doesn't drive them. It's knowing the impact that they have and can have is what drives them.
Mm.
So if you have a heart-led leader, share with them why you enjoy working where you work and why you value them, because that is what will drive them.
Mm.
Um,
And remind them that they need to make others like them, not
yeah,
run themselves into the ground because they can't find enough other people
yeah,
willing to do that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's yeah, and it's important for them to also, they don't need to do everything for you.
Mm.
They can they need to take time out for themselves too.
Yeah.
Um, working fewer days would be my second one.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we're confined to the structures of 9 to 3 bare
Mm.
minimum because schools are open.
Yeah.
So ultimately, if the education system changed, we could provide more flexibility. Sometimes it's really frustrating for me that I preach flex, and what our neurodivergent team members need is that flexibility, and I can't give them that flexibility
Mm.
to the extent that I would love to. So if we could reevaluate and change our system so that actually we can accommodate those individuals, that would be my dream. So that's something I would change if I could. And the final one will be more funding, because what we do as a business is a needs must, right? I
Mm.
believe communication should be free. I hate barriers. I said that at the beginning.
Mm.
And money should not be a barrier to accessing good quality speech and language therapy or support, right? But we are sensible, and for us to be sustainable, we need to be able to make money and generate money. But so actually, if there was more funding or pots of funding available that allowed us to deliver our services for free or even more cost effectively, I would love that,
Mm.
right? We try our best where we can, but if there was more funding, then actually the impact that we could have could be even greater.
Mm.
So those would be my three things. One of your other questions was about social media and how it's affected our work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one.
So from a business perspective, it's given us a reach and it's allowed us to connect with people worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And, we are quite ahead of the game in terms of neurodivergence acceptance
Mm-hmm.
and understanding communication challenges. But many countries are not there. So for them, when they think about speech and language difficulties, they only think about the really specialist needs. And
Mm.
in a lot of countries, those schools go to special schools.
Mm.
But actually, they don't need to be in a special school, right? So social media has allowed us to connect and broaden our reach. And it's allowed us to share education and knowledge with a wide range of communities about speech and language. It's basically helping us share our voice and the voice of children and young people with communication difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, it can lead to burnout. And thinking about it from neurodivergent people, um, the intensity and pace can lead to burnout. So
Yeah.
it's got to be used strategically, not reactively. Um, and it can cause for children and young people, social media can do a lot of damage as well. So
Mm.
it's really important, so if any parents are listening to this, it's really important to talk to your children about social media use, but not from a young age. So not till they're old, till they're, I don't know.
Yeah, not wait until they've got their
Yeah,
phone.
and being aware of what your children are consuming,
Mm.
right? The one thing that a lot of parents forget is passive, um what's the word I'm looking for? We used to call it, passive smokers, passive absorbers of social media, right? So my
Yeah.
youngest daughter, she's 8, she doesn't have a phone
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't have any social media accounts, but her friends do,
Mm-hmm.
and she learns all sorts from
Yeah.
them,
Yeah. And
right?
and what do you see as well? It's not just, oh, they've seen that, but they'll show you. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
we've developed a terrible culture where people will shove images of the worst things just in
yeah,
your face, like that's
yeah,
okay. That's fine for me to show you some of the worst possible things that you can see. Just do that. That's
yeah,
fine. That's not
exactly.
fine.
No, exactly. And some schools have really strict rules about no phone use, right?
Mm,
My daughter's high school, I don't know whether they've done this intentionally, but actually they've always taught the children that phones are now part of your existence in your life. Let's learn how to use them maturely. So
yeah.
they've never had rules around no phone use,
Yeah.
and they've never had any issues in their schools.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, but again, it's because they've treating these children as equal and trusting them to be responsible with their phones
Mm-hmm.
and showing them how to be responsible with their phones.
Yeah.
Obviously, in my children's case, that message also gets supported at home. Things like when my eldest was young, we used to talk through how for her she could self-manage herself,
Mm-hmm.
how she could look at her phone use and look at what apps she's using, and we did. And when she was very young, so obviously with the middle one who had the leukemia treatment, she actually was given a phone a lot earlier because she had to grow up very
Mm,
quickly. But we gave her a phone because she was in isolation, she was away from her siblings
mm-hmm.
and her friends, and there had to be a way for her to connect. But again, even with her, we had, rules. We set up the phone so they would automatically stop working at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't able to take her phone up to her bed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite easy to not have any rules when your child is going through something as
Mm-hmm.
awful as that. But you have to think about the bigger picture. You have to think about her
Mm-hmm.
growing up and having the best adult life.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that will happen or not, obviously I understand when someone's going through cancer treatment is different, isn't it?
Mm.
But you have to have the faith that actually they will hopefully become an adult, and you want them to be a happy, fulfilled, confident, comfortable adult. And it's about putting those steps in place as well as giving her that nurturing and that freedom that she would need in that difficult time more than
Yeah.
other children, right? It's about striking that balance, but it's
Yeah.
about doing it consciously. Anything that you expose your children to, it's really important to do it consciously.
Mm.
You shouldn't be parenting based on your parenting experiences. Parent consciously. Think about how you want to parent,
Mm.
and why you want to parent that way. It comes back to the why for me.
Mm.
That will help you to be more proactive rather than reactive. So social media, coming back to it, is great. It's a great tool, but it's got to be used in a strategic way with purpose, not just reactively, not just consuming. And it's not just me saying this. There's a lot of evidence and data out there that's now
Mm-hmm.
showing this. I wish they'd just given me all that money
Yeah.
for that research.
I could have told you this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I could do something useful with the cash, like to
Exactly,
solve it. So,
exactly, exactly, absolutely.
but oh no, you've got to get all your mates from school, haven't you, and give them a job.
Um,
And that's I said that. Asma didn't say that. I said that. So I am not putting words in her mouth. So I'm going to let you escape. If you feel free to, if you've got things written down, because I would love to sort of, the COVID one's a massive one. I think there would
oh,
have
we
been a
can
lot
we
in
can
there.
actually quickly cover that one. Let's cover that one.
Okay, go on.
Um, okay, so the question was, how has COVID affected your work?
Mm.
Okay, in some ways, COVID was actually really good for us,
Hmm.
right? And
I
let me
guess
explain.
visibility wise and so on,
Okay,
or
as a business, yeah, slightly no. Let me explain. Sorry.
okay.
So you remember we talked about our approach to environmental impact.
Mm-hmm.
So we took on this big NHS contract and we 2P'd it over the workforce, and we really wanted to change their style of working,
Mm-hmm.
just to make them more efficient. They had to travel a lot between different sites and for meetings, and a lot of those they didn't need to be together, but they felt that they wanted to be together because that's how they've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not want to explore virtual appointments or working virtually at all, zero.
Mm.
We had all the processes in place because we were using it already on various parts of our other parts of our business, but this particular team were very resistant. COVID happened. 5 days. Took 5 days and they were all online and working from home and virtual, and they loved it and they adopted it and it was brilliant. But ultimately what it meant for the families is that we were one of the only services that didn't stop. So
Mm.
our waiting lists post COVID didn't go whoo, shooting up.
Mm.
So that was one positive for us as a business. In terms of the children and young people, since COVID, we have definitely seen a sharp spike of children
I was going to
with
say,
speech and
so
language
many
needs.
kids, yeah, like all
Yeah,
their social skills are destroyed, like their
yeah,
confidence.
yeah.
Yeah.
Those natural opportunities that they would have
Mm-hmm.
had in terms of interacting with peers and, you know, all those other holistic opportunities, a lot of children miss those, but also interactions with professionals. So where there was a young child, the parents might not necessarily know
Mm.
that they had if it was your first child, you don't necessarily know about developmental milestones and language milestones. You're not sure
Well, you're just
about
used
what you're
to
looking for.
the
Yeah,
child that doesn't change because you can't see the change. You just every now and then go, oh, look, they've changed. Because you can't see the growth, the development,
exactly.
can
You're
you?
with them
It's
all the
just
time.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so in terms of speech and and then there were lots of speech and language therapy services that redeployed their staff, so they weren't providing a speech and language therapy service.
Mm-hmm.
And so waiting lists grew, and I think a lot of services are still trying to catch up
Mm.
with the backlog, but also the impact that it's had on children and young people's development, and
The
more and more children
anxiety, the
being,
change of
yeah,
circumstances,
yeah.
the like, what's going on,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
and let's face it, a lot of people discovered another world, right?
Mm.
For me, it was a massive eye opener, COVID, because it wasn't my neurodivergence wasn't diagnosed until just after COVID.
Mm.
So, and I realized, hold on a second, so I can work in this way
Mm-hmm.
and not have to physically interact with people in the environment. I love this. You know, for me, it meant that I didn't have to try and work out what their non-verbals were telling me as well as
Mm.
what their words were telling me.
Mm.
Right, and a lot of the non-verbals are in our face, so I could read that because I could see it in the screen. And I didn't have to worry about what else was going on.
Mm.
So I only had one thing to focus on. So for me, and from a work perspective, it was brilliant,
Mm.
and I was able to keep people quite energized on the screen. So, for me, it was good, and I can feed off my own energy.
Mm.
I don't need to feed off other people's energy. So so for me in that perspective it was also positive as well. That's personally. So as a business so there are some examples I've given you, and we absolutely knew how to motivate our team and how to keep our team engaged. And I would say as a team, as a workforce, we were really, really engaged and we felt really close and very united.
Mm. Did it
um
spread your reach as well? Did it kind of make you more visible overall? Because with everyone being online, I guess like you're going through more people, which is
yeah,
ideally
yeah.
more recommends word of mouth and stuff. So there would have been a bit of a buzz.
Maybe we weren't trying to do any business growth then,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think we maintained what we already had.
Yeah.
But I guess also a lot of our contracts are directly with schools, and we didn't really get to engage with parents. But during COVID, we had more engagement with parents, which was
Mm.
nice,
Mm.
as well. So they got to get involved, too. So, it wasn't ideal because obviously sometimes people were fighting over one screen and one computer, and
Mm.
that was a challenge. So there were lots of challenges, but I would say there were some positives for us as well.
Well, like you say, the main thing is that, you don't have to have that argument now about like, oh, what we could do online and we can reach this remotely and we can do so much
Yeah.
more. I don't have to travel there. It's like, I don't need to have that conversation 28 times a day or
Exactly.
whatever anymore.
And the
No.
amount of innovation that happened in that time as well within the team, like we developed loads of tools and resources that could be used virtually, and it was in that sense really, 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 really good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to let you escape unless
I know.
you've got anything particular you want to say. But thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and good luck with everything going forward.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing the result of it. It's been really, really lovely. Thank you very much for having me.
It will come out eventually. So yeah, Series 6 is starting today, finally, 5 months into the year. So, but there we go. This is life, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
All right,
Brilliant.
Asma. Thank you very much. Thank you again to Asma for being my guest. Thank you, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. You can find Asma at linkedin.com/in/Asma CEO or Instagram.com/asma.ceo or Instagram.com/Chatterbug_SLT. If you'd like to contact me about anything working hours related, then you can email me about this show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So, try to work for peace and try to plan with kindness. Raise your voice, but reduce your impact. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited, created and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Remember Western Studios Leeds Limited when you're ready to start making your content in West Yorkshire. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook, facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds, and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Bookmark western-studios.com so you can see the latest prices and use my contact page to drop me a message about your own podcast project or working hours at any time from anywhere. Maybe you want or need a podcast host, co-host or narrator for your podcast project. Maybe you just need another voice for one or more episodes of your show. Podcasts are so much more than gossip, book promotions and marketing for online courses. Podcasts and other audio content get your online brand out there. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to have an audiobook or video course? Want to share your learning, knowledge and expertise in your field? Want to learn, teach or raise awareness of something general or particular? Want to improve internal comms with messages your staff might actually engage with? Or do you just want to brighten up the world with some entertaining content? Then make a podcast. If you're making your podcast within West Yorkshire, then think about making it with western-studios.com. Whatever your podcast questions or needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.